Basically, making photographs out of things that I find on the street or objects that I have around anyway, just that I've collected throughout the course of my daily life, is something that I've had kind of a secondary interest in for a long time. I've made pictures in the past out of yogurt lids and pieces of plastic, and once I had a bunch of sliced cheese left over from a shoot that I did for a magazine, and I ended up making a photograph out of that. So I've always kind of appreciated the challenge of taking an object and making a picture out of it, and also the challenge of seeing something interesting in this extremely mundane thing. So what I proposed to do for Locust Projects was to scavenge the street for litter, and to do this thing that I've been doing sort of passively in a much more active, intentional way. So I spent a couple days collecting litter from the streets of Miami, thinking that the litter that I found there would have some specificity to the place of Miami itself. It turns out that most of what I found was kind of ubiquitous garbage left from, the kind of daily life that you might find anywhere in the United States. It was a lot of plastic, things like that. So I think in the end, while some of the objects have a kind of Miami character, you can see a flip-flop in one picture or a piece of sunglasses in another, a lot of it is the kind of garbage that you really can find anywhere. So I collected these objects and then I sorted them. I basically sorted them by shape. I thought that I left the project pretty open-ended in terms of how I would approach it, and I really wanted whatever I find to inform the making of the pictures and to inform my decision-making in terms of how the pictures would look. So what I found was that there were kind of categories of objects emerged as soon as I started collecting things. There were a lot of round plastic lids. There were a lot of square pieces of foil, things like that. So I kind of grouped them in terms of their formal qualities, and I got really interested in the relationship between the use of an object and its recognizable purpose and what it looks like. So that was kind of my starting point for putting the still lifes together. And I had been experimenting a lot with in-camera, double exposure and controlled light leak processes. And so I decided to do that along with some of the pictures to kind of emphasize some of these qualities of the objects that I found even further. So I took cues from the objects themselves and made these handmade paper screens that went over the film that I was shooting with to control certain shapes and patterns that would be overlaid on the image that had, in my mind, a relationship with the character of the objects themselves. The process is really imperfect, and that's something that you can see in the photograph. So I was really interested in the perfect squares and the perfect circles and the perfectly straight lines and the extremely saturated colors that you see in mass-produced objects. So I was interested in this relationship between that perfect geometry and that you see in the objects and the imperfect geometry that you see in the handmade screen. One last thing I wanted to mention was the origin of the title of the show, Limonene. Limonene is a word that you can see imprinted on one of the red plastic lids that you can see in several of the photographs. So it's found text, and I liked the idea of having the title submit to the same creative rules that the rest of the show did. So the title itself it's kind of a nonsense word, but the title itself is found text. It's actually the only text that you can see in any of the images.